Let's add a diving lip to our bait so that we can fish in different depths. After we've created the basic shape of that lip, we'll play with its dimensions until we get it just the way we want for different diving depths, different shapes, different action. And listen, maybe adding a diving lip to a popper is a terrible idea. But who knows? Maybe we just invented the coolest bait ever. So in the last video that I recorded in this series, we took our popper and added a weight chamber. And to see it, we made this bait a little bit transparent. I find that a tiny bit distracting. So I'm going to go to the body cuts here, down in the properties on the view tab, and change that transparency back down to 0. Then I'm going to go ahead and hide the body and bring back the side profile. And I will create a new sketch on the side plane, YZ. So this is just going to be a simple line. I'll drop it on the axis there, drag it out, and let's set a constraint. We will use 8.5. Then we're going to set another constraint, and here we'll set the angle. So I will try 45 degrees. That's a pretty standard jerkbait angle. Of course, we can change that later. Let's uncheck this and see what our constraints are. I accidentally got a length constraint here, and that's just fine. In fact, that's pretty close to what I want, so I will just leave it like that. Let's close this sketch. Let's give it the name Lip Placement Sketch, and I'll go ahead and save my file. Okay, now let's go ahead and bump up the points on this lip placement sketch because we'll use it to map another sketch. So let's make that 10 again, and I will make a copy of that. And I need to make a copy of it because I want to create a plane, or I want to attach a sketch to 3 points here. So what I will do is I will take this copy of the sketch, and you can see I've reoriented this way so that we can see what direction to go. And down here in our navigator, you can see we need to go in the X direction one way or another. So I will go to the Data tab, to Placement, to Position, and I'll just use my Page Up key to move that over 10 millimeters. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and create the sketch that will be the outline of our bill and attach it to these points. I'm going to first select that point, then Control select another point on that line, and just one of the points on this other line. With all 3 of those selected, I will create a sketch, and this is going to give us automatically a plane by 3 points. Just go ahead and say OK. Okay, our sketch is in the right plane, and if we rotate it a little bit, you can see that this line over here is the line that we would like to build our sketch against. So let's bring in the external geometry of that placement line, and we'll start to build that diving lip. Let's do a horizontal line here and select both of those points and that point and make it symmetric. And let's give that a dimension. Let's go 8 millimeters, and let's give this a name of back width. We will use that later. Let's draw another couple of lines down for the straight edges of the diving lip. And with this line, I am going to toggle construction geometry and use a construction line to keep those things in the same orientation or along a straight line there. And then I'm also going to make them symmetric to this line. And I will dimension this width here 15 millimeters and name this front width. Let's go back into regular geometry and do a arc by 3 points, and we're going to zoom in and drop it on that line and that point, and then drag until I hit this point here. Now, the only degree of freedom we have is how long this line is here. So I'm going to go ahead and just dimension it and let's say 15 millimeters and call this length. Now our sketch is fully constrained, so let's get out of it and let's name it lip. And now that we have our lip, we will give it an extrude. And here I want to go 2 millimeters thick, and I want the extrude to be symmetric so that it doesn't hang on top of or below the line that we created. And there's our bill. So if we bring the bait back, you can see that's what we're left with. I'm going to go ahead and hide these sketches here. And let's start playing a little bit with the angle and the shape of this bait. First of all, let's say that we don't want 45 degrees. Let's say we want a little bit of a deeper diver and we want to make this lip a shallower angle. Well, to do that, let's go back into this sketch here where we constrain 45 degrees and just change it to say 20 and close. Now something very strange happened when we did that. And it's because of the way I attached the sketch, this bill sketch, to those lines. So one of my lines is at 20 degrees and the other one is at 45 degrees. So let's fix that problem now. What I'm going to do is go ahead and hide everything except for that lip placement sketch. And I'm going to create another sketch on the side plane. And I'm just going to bring in any one of those points. Let's bring that point in and drop a point on it. If I close out of this, I can rename this lip placement point maybe. And let's go ahead and bump its point size up to 10. Now we're not going to see it because that point is exactly on the other point. Same as before, we're just going to come down here to the placement and I'm going to bump it over about 10 millimeters. Now that won't fix our problem because this sketch is still mapped to the erroneous sketch here. So I'm going to go ahead and remap it. And all we have to do for that is making sure that it's the one selected in the model view here, the tree view. You come down here to the data and let's make this a little bigger. And you go down here to this attachment support and map mode. If I click on the map mode and click on the 3 dots, we can see what it's currently attached to here. And sometimes you don't know what the number of the sketch is. So the way to, when you're in this screen, one way that you can kind of figure that out is just select a vertex. And if you look down here in the status bar, it says sketch 5, edge 1. Okay. So sketch 5 is this line, and that's our good line. So I want to leave sketch 5 alone, and I want to change sketch 6. So if I click the vertex button, it'll go back to selecting, and I'm going to select this point that we just created instead and say OK. And when we do that and bring back the bait and hide these sketches, it still looks wrong, but let's do a refresh. And it's right back where it needs to be. Now at that angle, this bill doesn't look great, but of course we can always affect that with the angle in that lip placement sketch. So let's go back in there and let's change it back to 45 degrees so that I can show you the other ways that we can modify this. So when we created the sketch for this bill, we named 3 constraints. In order to change the general shape of this bill, all we have to do now is go to those constraints in the sketch down here in the Properties tab. We could open the sketch and do it, but we can also go down here in the Properties tab in Data and find the sketch constraints. Once we've done that, you can see our named constraints here and we can start playing with them. So for example, if I change that back width, which is buried in the lure, to something very small, like 1 millimeter, you're going to see that shape change. And maybe you love that change. Maybe you would like for the bill to be wider up here at the front. So we could change that to say 25. And you get that sort of a shape. You can also play with the length. And if we drop and make the front width and the length fairly similar, you can make kind of a circle here. And this is all very easy to do without even having to redraw your sketch. So I hope that this video was helpful. Now that you've got your popper diver exactly the way you would like, why don't you go ahead and get out there on the water and catch a really cool fish like this one here.